Please, sir.
Speaking of James Madison, I take in the future you will not think much of his Virginia plan. Would you share with us why?
Perhaps it's because he was educated at the College of New Jersey at Nassau Hall, near Princetown. But Jimmy Madison doesn't seem to believe that because the Articles of Confederation weren't perfect, but got us through the war, that he has the brilliance to come up with a whole new idea as to securing the rights and liberties of the people of Virginia. He is, of course, going to be the author, one of the chiefest authors of the federal system of government. A plan calling for a consolidated, centralized government binding all of these several states together. I will be the chiefest opponent of this particular plan. To give you an idea, in fact, as to how vigorous my opposition of it will be, the constitutional ratification debates here in Richmond Town in June of 1788 will last a total of 22 days, and I will speak for almost all of 17 of those days, picking apart word by word and phrase by phrase that most ruinous and disastrous scheme presented by that upstart Madison. He, of course, is going to emerge after this convention, somehow, in the minds of everyone present, the smartest man in the room. Though half the time you can't hear him.
Got a high, squeaky voice. Inaudible most of the time.
What troubles me most, of course, about his plan is that it's lacking something that I believe to be absolutely essential for a free people and a free government. I speak of a Bill of Rights. Yes, Madison was there with me in the 5th Virginia Convention. He, too, being a Virginian, knows that we do everything right here in Virginia. After all, what's a government supposed to do? What are its purposes? There are only three: to keep the peace, protect property, and to secure rights. Well, how can a government secure those rights if it doesn't know what those rights are? So that's the way we did it here in Williamsburg. We wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and then we wrote our Constitution. And it states in the preamble of our Declaration of Rights that that is the foundation and the basis for our government that's coming later. Well, Madison first writes a Constitution, and then he tells us we don't need a Bill of Rights. Because, oh, Mr. Henry, this Constitution is so perfectly written that individual liberties are implied. And then he changes his tune over to this. We don't want a Bill of Rights, Mr. Henry, because, well, what if we forget one or two? That will naturally surrender those rights over to the federal government. We can't have that. And then finally, we get this. All right, Henry, tell you what. Ratify this Constitution now, and I'll give you a Bill of Rights later. I promise. Imagine what I have to say. Well, I'll tell you. In part only, because this particular harangue lasts all of 8½ hours. 17th of June, 1788. Only one speaker all day long in Richmond. Your humble servant. And I quote, and by the way, you may trust this as verbatim accurate, all thanks to a man by the name of Robertson, David Robertson, an attorney in Richmond, who by that time will have developed for himself a form of shorthand. He'll also have 2 of his clerks trained to that art, and all 3 of them will be on hand every minute the convention is sitting, writing down everything that they can hear, which is why there's so much Madison missing. No jest. Madison takes the floor. Parenthetical note. Couldn't hear him for 5 minutes. And I quote, gentlemen, we are now promised a Bill of Rights to follow our own Virginia example. But can we trust them, gentlemen, when their opposition to that proposal was so vigorous in the first place? Does it not insult your judgments to be told to first adopt and then amend? Is your rage for novelty so great that first you sign and seal and then retract? Gentlemen, you agree to bind yourselves hand and foot. And for the sake of what? Of being unbound? You go into a dungeon. For what? to get out? Is there no danger that the bolts of federal authority will shut you in and keep you there? I ask again, gentlemen, where is that example in the history of mankind that a government was amended by those who instituted it? I should be led to take that man for a lunatic who would tell me to run into the adoption of a government avowedly defective in the hope of amending it afterwards. Believe it or not, though, friends, we were actually talking about signing a constitution without knowing what was in it.
Oh my gracious.
And we did it. Of course, he finally gives you what he believes passes for a Bill of Rights. I send him 20 suggestions as to what that Bill of Rights ought to look like. 20 different articles. You get 10. My response when I finally see it in 1791, that's right, takes you 4 years before you finally get your Bill of Rights. Too feeble and too few. And that's just the first time I tangled. Well, no, that's the second time I tangled with Madison. And after that,
He and I never speak to one another again.